Councilmember Taylor, we're ready to begin.
Thank you. We're missing a committee member.
Is it John?
We're missing Mr. Larson.
John's right out there. Come on, John.
I hereby call this March 21st meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. All committee members, with the exception of Councilmember Burke, are participating in person. Under North Carolina General Statutes, this meeting is treated like a virtual or a remote meeting and is being streamed live. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A committee member will be recognized and they will state their vote. I will then turn it over to the clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Larson.
Present.
Councilmember Mundy.
Present.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present. I just want to take a moment as a note here. I just want to announce that the Community Development Housing General Government meeting is going to be at 4 p.m., just a little bit early on tomorrow, so please govern yourselves accordingly. At this time, we always like to take a moment and thank our police, fire, and emergency management for the work that you do to keep our community safe. We don't have hats, but we tip our hats to you, and we thank you for your service to our community. With that being said, members of the council and committee, as you know, items on the consent agenda are typically approved with one sweeping motion unless a member of the council committee pulls an item for consideration. With that being said, members of the committee, are there any items that we should pull on the consent agenda for consideration at this time? If there is none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will go to the roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes, that approves the consent agenda unanimously. We'll now move to item G1, please.
Item G1, resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement between the city and county to co-locate the 911 call centers at Forsyth County Public Safety Center at 301 North Church Street.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Assistant City Manager Tony.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, members of the committee and council. This resolution before you allows us to enter into an interlocal agreement. Currently, there are two 911 centers. There's the City Emergency Communications Center that is on 725 North Cherry Street, and then the county operates a 911 center at 301 North Church Street. The city's 911 center does not comply with the Category 4 of the North Carolina Building Code or recommendations contained in National Fire Protection Association standards for installation, maintenance, and use of emergency services communication systems. These requirements and recommendations include wind and seismic resistance, snow load capacity, plumbing, robustness, vibration tolerance, lightning protection, and staff support amenities. And therefore, the county building at the Forsyth County Public Safety Center on Church Street, they meet these requirements. And so because our facility does not meet these requirements, we need to relocate our 911 center and co-locate to the 911 location at Church Street, which is the Forsyth County Public Safety Center. And so this transition will likely happen within the next 12 to 18 months. This location is in the current space where the sheriff's office is located. And so they have a plan to move the sheriff's office to a higher floor. That space will be opened up, and then they can co-locate the 911 center. So this is not a consolidation at this time, but it is a co-location. There's a monthly, the rent amount is $2,480.89 per month. And so we will be leasing the space from the county. This does not include, though, the upfit costs for the space. And so I will be bringing back additional information about the upfit once we get someone to kind of look at the space for the move. I have sent some information to the budget office, so you will see some information as part of some potential capital improvement in that budget. But this lease is this interlocal is for the lease agreement. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. Any questions for Ms. Tony at this time? Councilman Mundy.
Thank you for the presentation, and a quick question. What are the plans for the space that will be vacating on Cherry Street?
That is a good question. We have not gotten that far. This was kind of new news about, kind of the urgency. Or it's been some time where we realized the building did not meet some of the requirements. But now we're moving forward with the relocation. So we'll discuss that with the police department and think about, we decided not to make that a backup location just because it just did not meet the requirements, and that really didn't make sense. So our backup location, in the event there's something to happen to the county building, would be at the airport, where the county has a backup location as well. So it's possible for training or other services, but I'll have to get with the police chief and some of the staff and look at what they would like to do with the
Okay,
existing
thanks. I'm
space.
just curious. Does not drive a decision, just
Okay.
curious.
Councilwoman Scipio.
Thank you. Quick question. Just to clarify my understanding, we are not merging the systems. We will still have the two 911 systems separate, but just in the same building.
Yes, Councilmember Scipio, that is correct. However, you will hear an item on April that talks a little bit about some needs for the fire 911 component. So that will be a little bit of a different issue, but in terms of the two 911 centers, they will remain separate entities at this time.
And I have one more question. I think it's always surprising to find that we have public buildings that are not in compliance with some regulations. Are we assessing our other buildings in the city to see what is not in compliance as it relates to public safety or any other services that we have?
Well, we are looking, well, there was a study, especially after the event at the North Point location. And so we are looking at some of our police substations and working with Assistant City Manager Taylor and his staff. We're actually in property facility maintenance that falls under his purview, and looking at making sure that our public safety facilities are up to a certain standard of safety.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
I apologize, I hadn't read the lease. But basically, Ms. Tony, you're saying that we are moving out to just do upfits, rehab, and when it's complete, they'll move back to Cherry?
No, ma'am, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, this will be a permanent move for our 911 center because the existing location where they are does not meet the Category 4 standards of the North Carolina Building Code.
And again, I didn't read the carve. So you're telling me that we're having to relocate because the building isn't compliant. So when did we find this out? Have we always known that and they've allowed us to operate there, whoever they are, the state or the federal government? I'm just curious because, I know since I've been on the council, we've been bonding and capital and whatever for the Vivian H. Burke Public Safety Building. I know we did Thomasville Factory for training and everything's the storage of records. But I don't understand why, now that we done spent all this money on this building, now we're saying that it's not compliant to whatever it is that we need. I don't understand.
I think
Mr.
Mr. Garrett
Garrett.
had a comment.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and members of the committee. Little history here. The building was more or less grandfathered by inspection staff many years ago. Initially, this statute or this requirement is it's an unusual requirement in that it's for 911 centers and for emergency operation centers, not for all law enforcement or public safety, but for those critical things, it has to meet this earthquake hardening standard. Now, honestly, the risk of an earthquake is pretty slim, but that's what the code says. The cost to upfit the Vivian H. Burke Public Safety Center to meet that code was in excess of like $10 million. But we did not find out about this, about the fact that this was going to kick in. And frankly, the architect of this project, who we won't be using in the future, missed this. It came during the initial construction that our building inspectors caught it, realized that the building was not in compliance, frankly, was never in compliance, and that they gave us, talking to the state, they gave us 5 years from that date to either make the building compliant or find another location. That's when we started the conversations with the county, because the sheriff's building, the way it was built, originally by Reynolds, it already is compliant with that. And so we started conversations with them. There's a lot of utility in co-locating. We hope that's the first step towards complete consolidation down the line, as well as Ms. Tony said, the other benefit here is we will be completely consolidating fire and EMS dispatch, which will be a significant improvement on the time it takes before medical calls are dispatched in the city. So, but yeah, again, we did not find out until after this project started. Architect did not catch it. Our staff caught it, and then we scrambled to find another provision.
Well, my only concern is, again, that we told the taxpayers one thing to vote on bonds or whatever it is that we do, and now we're finding out from whoever that it's not compliant, whatever we were trying to do, to spend all this money on this building. And nobody can say what's going to happen. How many employees are now we going to move out of the building that to the county's building? And as the question came up, what are we going to do with that space? And we know in the new world of work, space is not a thing anymore like it used to be. You can do your job from home or wherever. But I guess maybe I'm a little bit concerned is because, again, I just don't understand how we got to this point when we were supposed, Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop in a minute, but I'm a little upset. This is the North Ward. That public safety building is part of who we are. That helps connect us to downtown. And we put all this money into it, and now we moving out ex-employees over to the county's building. They're going to pay them rent. So all I'm asking for, Mr. Garrett, is somebody please get me a report on the very beginning, and this is probably going to take me back to when I first got on the council, when I heard about how bad that building was, and we're not going to be able to stay in it. And we started, rehab on that building how many years ago?
Chiefs are sitting here probably 4 years ago, yes.
Crazy. Anyway, would somebody please get me a report to explain to me how we got to the decision to rehab the building, how much it was going to cost, how the decisions were made to move employees out until we could upfit the building to make it compliant to whatever rules we had to make it compliant to. And now that the building is almost complete or whatever, now we find out because the engineer or whoever, because now we need to deal with that, because this goes back to I need to find out who that engineer is, what did we do to ensure that they were doing their job, and how was it that we just now finding all of this out? It's not just for the council, but it's for the citizens of Winston-Salem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And Ms. Tony, of course, you know this is an action item. If this committee approves item G1, if you could provide that information that Mayor Pro Tem has asked for by Monday, and also I think she had a question about the number of employees that will be moved, if you can include that in the report as well. Councilman Larson, you've been patient. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I share some of the concerns of Mayor Pro Tem a little bit on this. Paying $29,000 a year to the county is not something I really relish. I suppose they have better facilities than we have, and it's kind of unfortunate that may be the case. the fact that it's not going into the main police building on Cherry Street or whatever, police center, is of some concern, but I guess my bigger question is there no other place that we can invest our own money into that would accommodate this? I mean, do we have no other square footage that you could find that we could even build a place on our property that would meet their requirements? I guess not. I'm just a little concerned about getting into an arrangement here. You're saying that we're going to keep it separate, fire and police will be separate from the county? Their security and our...
Yes, this is the 911 Communication Center.
But they're co-located in the same room.
And so those entities will remain separate, but you will hear another item next month about merging fire 911 communications with the county.
Right now, it's a separate 911 system.
Yes, but city and county will continue to remain, function separately.
Maybe
for
it's
the
an
time being.
opportunity to find a way to work with the county, but I would hope that if we're going to start consolidating our 911 system, that we recognize that we're putting $29,000 a year into this system. And maybe there's some negotiating that could be done to help protect the city's interest on this. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilman Burke, I'm going to come to you in just 1 second. Ms. Tony, how time-sensitive is this item? And I know we know how essential the 911 call system is. How time-sensitive is this item?
Well, it's we probably have a little time. The county is wanting some agreement about the lease arrangement, mainly because they're trying to move departments within that building as well. So they need some idea. They're trying to move the sheriff's office up to the higher floor. That creates the space for us. And so they want to know sooner than later. They've actually been asking, for some information for a while, but it's totally up to you all. The move would not happen probably until early next year. I mean, we still have to get a architect, some construction person to come in, do the design work and upfit the space. So.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. We'll hear from Councilmember Burke. We'll come back to you, Mr. Larson, and then we'll discuss the pleasure of the committee on item G1. Councilmember Burke.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I have a question for our city manager or Ms. Tony. The first question is, what recourse do we have for the engineer at our public safety center who dropped the ball? Do we have any recourse at all? And if so, what?
Mr. Garrity?
I will get that information for you. I mean, offhand, I don't know for sure, but I'll get you that information.
Is this something, Mr. Garrity, that can be included in the packet of information?
Yes, and I would note that April committees are right around the corner because we're pushed back. So I don't think if the committee chooses to hold this until April, I don't think the county they'll survive.
Yeah, I thought about that, which is my question about time sensitivity, but we'll push forward and see what we can come to. Councilmember Burke, excuse me.
Another question, and it is along the line of the question that Councilmember Larson had. The $29,000 to the county, how can we negotiate that? That seems like a lot to pay for a collaboration that will be beneficial to them as well. And also thinking forward about the merging the fire with 911 later in April, as Ms. Tony has suggested. How could that be done in another location if the city were able to identify a location that we could have and create for ourselves and not have to pay $29,000 a year? Ms. Tony.
Ms. Tony.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Burke. The county, they've looked at the space and looked at the usable square footage, and so we have gone back and forth a little bit, but it's $7.27 per usable square foot for that premise. And so, just kind of based on the standard in terms of space and usable space, that amount was what they thought was reasonable. for square footage. And like I said, we still would have to upfit the space, so there would be additional costs as well. The building, though, I think just making sure that we have another building, which I don't know if we do. I mean, I guess we can do a little bit more research, but it has to comply with this Category 4, the North Carolina Building Code. It has to be where it can maintain winds and seismic resistance and just all of the things related to a hurricane or any weather event that's major. And so we know for sure that the county building meets that requirement. And so it's just a move that just makes sense because the 911 county emergency communication center exists there. I think there are opportunities looking forward for a potential merger of some sort, just for efficiencies. And I think in that type of scenario, we could revisit some of the expenses and the lease agreement, which we can bow out with proper notice if we needed to. But in terms of timing, in a year, I think we've met the 5-year recommendation to move out the existing space. So we're up against a timeline only from kind of the standard of where we need to be for the building code.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tony. Sounds like this is something we should have been working on 5 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Larson.
Yes. Is there a sunset on this lease? Is it a 5-year lease, 10-year lease?
No, but in the lease, there is a provision to end the lease with reasonable timing by both parties.
Well, I'm sure the staff has done a lot of due diligence. It's a complicated thing, and I don't want to downplay the requirements of trying to find a home for this. But I do think, I'm a little concerned that long-term, unless we see a little more cooperation from the county and give it a 5-year period on this lease and then gives us another deadline to either find a home or negotiate with them some consolidation that's beneficial to both parties, might be something we'd want to look at. I would suggest.
I just want to be clear, there's not a 5-year cap on the lease. The 5-year was just to meet, just to make sure we stay in compliance with where we need to be in terms of building.
No, I understand that, but I'm talking about our relationship with the county and this lease agreement. We have no sunset on it currently.
That's correct.
And I think I would like to see a limit of some sort, either to have to renew it or revisit it. And I think maybe a 5-year period would give us a period to begin to think about long-term whether we're going to engage the county in a serious way of merger or whether we're going to have to go on our own and find a home that meets our needs a little bit better than maybe we were able to do in the last 5 years. We had this in front of.
I think the city attorney.
Is there a legal question here?
Attorney Carmen is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to mention that there is a 180-day notice provision for termination in the contract. That's all I was going to mention.
That's fine. I mean, I'm not concerned about that. I just don't want to go open-ended on this thing. I mean, we're going to spend you've already spent a lot of time and energy on it, and I don't want to devalue that. But I'm not sure that I'm ready to commit to a total open-ended agreement here without some time to reevaluate and some pressure on ourselves to either merge or not merge with this whole arrangement.
Thank you, Councilman Larson.
So I would propose, if we move it forward, Mr. Chairman, I would propose a 5-year extension of the lease. And if you want to talk about a renewal clause, I'm willing to talk about that as well. But I do think we need to have some time frame in which to sort this out.
And we'll come right back to that. That is on the table for consideration. I'll move to Councilman Mundy, and then we'll move to close out item G. Then Councilwoman Scipio, then we'll move to close out item G1. Councilman Mundy.
Ms. Tony, I think you started to touch on this. The question was if the city owns any property that meets these more stringent requirements, and it sounded like the answer is no. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So to do that on our own would require upfitting an existing building or building a new building from the ground up. So leasing is probably going to be the only realistic way to address this need, whether it's through the county or somewhere else. I just want to clarify that, and I thought that was what you said.
That is correct, Councilmember Mundy. The existing space, it would cost over $10 million to try to even get it close to what it needs to be, to meet the code, so yes.
Do we know if there are any other reasons that we would need to be up to code for any other changes in building codes since any of our buildings were built? If we were going to look at building a building or upfitting, are there any other departments that would need to go in there because of this stringent requirement, or does it seem to be exclusively for 911 operations?
Yeah, Councilman Mundy, I'm not aware, other than our EOC, which was moved, our Emergency Operations Center, and August Vernon and his staff, they were moved to, they're already in that county building. So I'm not aware of any other city functions that currently are out of compliance with the code. Ms. Tony is correct. One of the challenges we have is how expensive it would be for us to either build a building or retrofit a building. I mean, it would be well in excess. Your debt costs would be well in excess of the lease that the county's proposing.
Even though we might not like renting from the county, I doubt there are a lot of other options out there that would build to this specific stringent requirement. So
That's right.
we may not have a lot of options, is what I'm saying.
We don't have that many earthquakes here.
Councilwoman Scipio.
I always think sometimes things prevent, they trigger opportunities for us, and I'm not so certain, how have we operated a 911 center and been out of compliance with this reg, or is this reg something new that we didn't know about, and therefore we're having to comply now? But importantly, it might be a good thing for us to figure out how many buildings in our city are in compliance with this kind of regulation. I know it's more about seismic activity for earthquakes, but if you recall, the last several years, we've had earthquakes near us. And so I don't think we need to discount that we haven't had them historically, because climate change is making a big impact on us. But I think if we could, I don't know if there are building codes, we could check to see which other buildings might be safe and up to those standards. I just don't know if there are any that exist, because I think we should know that. This is our community, and we should know what's inside our community in our city. So not necessarily for Mondays, but if we could have someone check to see which buildings in our community are compliant at this point. I think we're going to have to do those kinds of investigations on some other things too, in terms of compliance and building codes. But I think having one building that is compliant, the Phillips building, the old Phillips building, is a good thing, that there is an option that we can continue to operate. Are we incurring any penalties by having our 911 system in a location that's not compliant, or will we be looking at any penalties in the future?
Ms. Tony.
My understanding, I think there could be.
At the end of the 5 years.
And that's when?
I have to get with inspections. I believe we're at least probably 3 years into that.
I think we're at least 4 years. Probably next year we'll be approaching the 5
Next
year.
year, so we need to be, okay, in compliance.
Yeah. And keep in mind, it's our 911 center. I mean, they need to be able to function in the event of an emergency.
I understand that.
Yeah, so,
All right, so members of the council and committee, Mr. Larson, I believe I'm going to let you have the last word, but let's do this. We have a couple of options on the floor today. We can move this item to Monday for a vote. As you've heard from Ms. Tony, the city manager, this is time sensitive. However, if we held this to the next Public Safety Committee agenda, we should be able to work through all the questions that have come up today, including the lease extension, reviewing our building inventory, and checking on, the amount of years that we are into our compliance. That would allow us to answer some questions and still be able to solve the critical need that we definitely need to support our 911 systems. Councilmember Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I think to move the project forward, I would make a motion that we approve it with an amendment that it be on a 5-year lease period with a renewal of 5-year option and see if the county is going to balk at that. I guess you're going to have to go take it back. It's a lengthy lease document, I got to say. A lot of legalese in there, and I can't say that I read the whole thing. But I would like us to put a sunset on this partnership. So if I could put that forward, Mr. Chairman, as a motion.
Oh, we have a motion. Is there a second on Councilmember Larson's motion? Okay. I ask again, is there a second on Councilmember Larson's motion? Councilmember Larson's motions fail for lack of a second. Councilmember Mundy, I heard that you had a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we continue this until our next Public Safety Committee to get all of these extra data and information so that we can feel better about making a decision. And not that we wouldn't want a 5-year sunset in the lease, but I think that's one of many things that we could decide if we had more data.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mundy. We have a second by Councilmember Burke. Discussion. Councilmember Larson.
Could I have some clarification as about how urgent it is that this get passed tonight and put forward next Monday? How time sensitive is this?
I think
Tony.
we can definitely wait till the April meeting for sure.
Wait for the April meeting, and the county's willing to do that.
They wouldn't have a choice if you all want to wait till April or not. I mean, but we do need an option for our 911 center.
Right.
And we are approaching kind of the 5-year compliance
So as we do this, some of these conditions that were listed by Councilmember Monday are really research matters of the staff as to condition of other buildings and matters such as that. In this time period, can we check with the county and see if if putting a sunset on this lease is going to jeopardize it in any way?
No, and honestly, I mean, the lease is written in a way that you all can choose to get out of the lease at any time within like 180 days, I believe.
180 days.
And so mutual agreement to get out of the lease.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the 180-day provision.
Yes,
So we
180
terminate with
days.
the
We can
180-day
terminate this
notice.
lease with a 130-day notice period, regardless of,
Yes.
Regardless of the reason.
well, I'm satisfied with that then.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. We will vote on item G1. Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Larson,
You have to vote no because I want to move it forward tonight.
Can I ask for a point of clarification? Are you voting?
Madam
on the
Attorney.
item? Are you voting on the item or to continue the item?
We're voting on the substitute motion to continue the item to be held in committee until our April agenda.
Okay, just want to be sure.
So you've called the roll. We have a yes, another yes, and then a no from Councilmember Larson. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Mundy,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
And that's a yes from me. So the item is passed 3-1. It stays in committee, and we will review this at our April meeting. Item G2, please.
Item G2, information regarding the City of Winston-Salem's recruitment and retention efforts.
Ms. Tony.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Taylor. Wait a minute. Is this the one for, is that the?
Mr. Taylor, did you want to add something here? I'd like to recognize Assistant City Manager Taylor.
That is G2.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman Taylor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, other members of the committee and council. Item G2 is an information item that relates to the challenges that we have faced with recruitment and retention. As you all are aware, we have an unprecedented number of vacancies. Therefore, staff is taking great effort to try to come up with new ideas and ways to address recruitment as well as retention. So at this time, I have Dr. Marcus Barnett here, our Human Resources Director, and he's going to come to you, give you a high-level overview of some of these options and answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'd like to recognize Dr. Barnett. You have the floor, sir.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and members of this committee. So what we have before you, and there's an information item that you all have. Is it okay for me to remove this?
We can hear you, yes, sir.
Right now, we have over 600 vacancies in the city. I can, okay. Right now, we have over 600 vacancies in the city, and this is as we are trying to fill all of our summer vacancies, et cetera. So one of the things that we're doing right now as a department is we are liaising with other similarly sized municipalities across the United States. We're also liaising with the 10 largest municipalities in the state of North Carolina to figure out what options are out there, what are people doing to fill their vacancies. And so this item that's before you just kind of goes through some of the things that we have right now in front of the city manager that hopefully we'll be able to bring to you as required, and that we'll be able to put in place to help our employees, one, but also help us to fill some of those vacancies so that we can continue to meet this council's core objectives. The first one that we have here is a sign-on incentive. So this sign-on incentive program would allow the city to essentially pay for hard-to-fill positions, basically a sign-on bonus. When someone joins our staff in one of those hard-to-fill roles, they will get a sign-on incentive basically in their first pay period of being employed, and then they would get the second half of that sign-on incentive once they've been with the organization for at least 6 months. We're also looking at a referral incentive. A lot of what we do in this business is trying to turn our employees into walking, talking, living, breathing billboards for our organization. And one of the best ways we can do that, I think, is probably going to be for us to incentivize it. And so what this referral incentive would do is encourage our employees to reach out to their friends, reach out to their families, and talk to them about how great it is to work for the city of Winston-Salem, and hopefully encourage them to join our staff. We're also looking at an expansion of the paid parental leave program. So as you all may be aware, this council in 2017 passed a resolution allowing the city to offer 6 weeks of paid parental leave to those employees who have children or have children placed with them through adoption or by virtue of the clerk of court. This would be an extension of that program, allowing from 6 to 12 weeks. We would also look at changing adjusted seniority provisions. One of the issues that we have encountered in this labor market, especially when it comes to us receiving top talent across this state, is when people are coming to us from other municipalities, they cannot bring their vacation time. And that's a really big sticking point for a lot of people. And so the way that this policy would work is it would essentially allow for the city manager to bring someone in. Let's say they've got 20 years of service with another municipality or with the state of North Carolina. They would be able to then come here earning vacation at a rate that is commensurate with that 20 years of service. We're also continuing to look at teleworking optioning. So that is continuing, the things that we've already been doing in terms of flexibility, allowing people to telework, but also looking at maybe we have some positions, not nearly a lot of positions, but we may have some positions that allow people to work completely remote. The city manager also has us working on looking at what we can do to get our healthcare premiums to $0 for employees. And so employees would essentially only be responsible for paying for healthcare for any of their dependents that they have on our plan. Still in the very early stages of having that discussion. We've engaged with our benefits broker to have that conversation, but right now early numbers are looking at about $2 million. Another program that I'm excited to be working on is a commercial driver's license program for City of Winston-Salem employees. What this program would allow us to do is to essentially create almost apprentice positions, bring people into these positions, have them working for the City of Winston-Salem while we are also paying for them to go and get their commercial driver's license. That would essentially open up a lot of options to us as an employer and to our employees. And essentially we would structure the program in a way such that they commit to a certain amount of time working for the City of Winston-Salem following receiving that licensure. The next item you'll see there is an in-service vacation payout. So this is something that is growing in popularity. Right now, the only time that we'll pay out vacation to an employee is if they leave service, so if they leave us and go somewhere else. But what a lot of places are doing, municipalities our size and a couple in the state of North Carolina, they are allowing for in-service vacation payout. So it's almost like a loan of sorts to yourself that, let's say you get to Christmas and, you've got 2 weeks of vacation time that you don't want to roll into the next year, we'll pay you out that vacation while you are actively still in service. So again, we're still looking at that. It will be writing a policy for it. Also looking at an increased city-paid life insurance program for our public safety employees, because I think we all recognize that our public safety employees are putting their lives at risk every day when they go out there and they service this community. And so this would give us as an organization the opportunity, instead of offering them one time their annual salary, to really kick that up and show them that we are committed to protecting them and really being appreciative for the work that they're doing for us on a daily basis. And the same thing with increased retirement savings account contributions for our public safety employees. So we are looking at all of our options. Still very early. I don't have a cost estimate on this, but we are actively working on that. And then the final two that we've got here are additional recognized holidays. So I've been talking a lot with the chief and talking a lot with some of our public safety employees, and one of their sticking points is, thank you for allowing me to accrue these holidays, but when am I supposed to use these holidays before they fall off? Because the way that the policy is currently written, employees lose some of their holidays. And so what this item would do is essentially it would eliminate that requirement. We would not wipe out holidays for our employees. They would be able to accrue them. They'd be able to use those holidays. But it also essentially gives the employees, and this is going to be consistent with municipalities across the state, also with the state of North Carolina and the court system, for us to have 3 days for holiday at the Christmas holiday. And then it would also permit the city manager to designate or have a floating holiday, whether he would choose to designate or not, and I think we had that previously. And then the final one here is a down payment assistance program. So this would allow up to $100,000 per year. So if we give people $5,000, we're looking at about 20 people in the program. But what this would allow is for employees who are purchasing homes in the corporate city limits of Winston-Salem for us to be able to provide financial assistance to them to purchase those homes. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. All good ideas on how we can improve on our recruitment and retention. Are there any questions for Dr. Barnett? Councilwoman Scipio.
I don't have questions. I think these are all good ideas. I do have a couple others for you to consider.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the ways my parents were able to be homeowners was that R.J. Reynolds actually paid for their mortgage through payroll deductions. So if the city could work with financial institutions and have it so that city employees could then get a mortgage, but it would come through our payroll deduction in some kind of way at a reduced rate. I mean, we've got banks, we should be able to work through that. And when we think about that also, I want to recommend city perks, PERKS, and if we could use our businesses in town or national partners to actually do certain perks for city employees, discounts or reduce rates, cars, whatever. I think if we could do something that lifts up our employees, that they get something real special. Everybody wants something special. So ongoing discounts, for all kinds of businesses that we could work that through.
Thank you.
Great suggestions, Councilmember Scipio. Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Barnett. Again, everybody's heard me talk about the new world of work. It's the NBA draft. That's what it is. It's the NFL draft. That's what it is.
So it feels like
it's who's putting things and stuff on the table for me and my family that you want me. Show me. I love all of your ideas. I see we're going to see some more in G3. Just a perspective, I worked at Johnson Controls, and we paid our employees their vacation check, the money, January 1. They got their vacations for the whole year in checks, and we didn't pay them all the vacations in one check. If an employee had 5 weeks of vacation, you got an individual check of 5 checks for your vacations. Now, you could take your vacations, you just wouldn't have any money. But the point is, this is basically what you're doing, and I applaud you because it means a lot to people to be able to count on that money, you know, when they really want it or need it or know that it's coming. So I think it's a great idea. I love all of them. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mundy.
Thank you, and I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I love all the ideas because we do have to compete with the private sector and other government entities. And I want to throw one out there. I think all city employees and council members should be able to park anywhere in the city.
Yeah, right.
That's not in front of a fire hydrant. But if it's a metered spot or a city-owned deck, I think that would be a perk for a lot of people, and it might even increase participation in downtown events like going to the opera. And the other thing is, you know, it's very ambitious to think that we could fill 600 positions with 1 or 2 fairs. So I think we need to continue looking at opportunities to contract. And I will throw out one area I don't want to make Mr. Taylor angry with me, but we've got to have better brush pickup. And if that's an outside company, we've just got to have better brush pickup. And that's one of a number of areas, I think, where we might be able to operate with contractors or outside vendors. And if we fill our coffers back up with full-time employees, then it's very easy to stop working with the vendor. So let's just work both sides of the streets if we can.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Burke.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I wanted to say thank you, Dr. Barnett. These are all outstanding recruiting and retention efforts. And I think just understanding that our workers now are in the driver's seat, and we have got to dangle in front of them whatever will attract them to the city. So you've done an outstanding job, and you're to be commended in your entire department. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Scipio.
And I forgot a big area, childcare. The cost of childcare is out of sight. And if we could do something to help support employees with their daycare, childcare, I think that's another great perk. I think we have to also think about how do we get our employees to really love the services we provide. And I mean, maybe we give employees bus passes that would increase their ridership. I mean, everybody can ride the bus free with the pass. So, you know, how do we maximize the services we deliver by giving our employees perks too? So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Scipio. Dr. Barnett, you've said some great things, and you've heard some great things from the DIS. If you would go back, compile all the information that you've heard today, and bring us back something to consider at a future meeting. Before you leave, we want to hear from Councilman Larson.
I applaud all of these suggestions. There's one that was not mentioned that I'm wondering is still on the table, and that's the career ladder for the police department. We talked about
Yes, that is something that will be coming separately. That is a discussion that we have ongoing between my office, the manager's office, and the police department.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're still looking at it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. Any further comments?
Not for me, Mr. Taylor? No, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Next item, Madam Clerk, please.
Item G3, information on Winston-Salem Police Department's retention and recruitment strategies.
All right, Ms. Tony, I see how we got confused on 2 and 3 now. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. Just because this is Public Safety Committee, we had an item to focus on police and where police have been in terms of recruitment and retention. As you know, and you see in the CARF, we have over 100 vacancies for sworn officers, which is extremely significant. And so we want to make sure we have a safe and secure community, and so law enforcement is one of the areas of great focus. Dr. Barnett mentioned many of the recruitment and retention strategies in his report, and so I will not repeat some of those, but the chief and the assistant Chief Penn, who's here tonight, as well as some of their staff, I did meet with them. They came up with some recruitment strategies. They had focus groups among the police officers who were able to provide some input into things that they would like to see in terms of retention. And so I just wanted to acknowledge their efforts and that we see them. And so the staff is still considering some of those ideas. The bullet points you see here are a little bit of what Dr. Barnett has already mentioned, is some additional items from the actual officers and police command staff, and some from senior management team. Councilmember Larson mentioned the career ladder, so that is a significant, really exclusive piece to police. And so some of the police staff have developed a draft plan of what that could look like. Right now, it's in the budget office. They are costing out some potentials and may revise it a little bit just so that we can try to figure out some version of the plan that would be affordable that we could get into this current year's budget. They see that as a significant recruitment and retention strategy, not only to keep our officers here so they can see every 6 months potential pay increases. They know what their salary will be. That seems to be of real importance to officers, but also as a recruitment tool. And so we're trying to recruit officers from other cities. They know where they will fall on that step plan. And so that seems to be really appealing to officers, and potentially bringing back officers who we may have lost to even smaller cities who offer some sort of step plan. They've merged it into a career ladder as well, so you would see Officer Police 1, 2, and 3 that gives officers opportunities to move up within their category in terms of a career ladder and step. And so there's opportunities for promotion even if they don't apply later to be a sergeant or some of the higher ranks. And so we believe that this is a great recruitment and retention strategy, and so hopefully we'll be able to bring back a proposal that we can get into this current year's budget.
Thank you, Ms. Tony. And I will say over the last 5 years, this council and this committee, we've worked really, really hard to bring our police officers up to a pay that they can be proud of. I know that we have a further work to do and a longer way to go, but these strategies are helpful to continue to move the police department and our city forward. So we've heard from our assistant city manager on this. We'll hear from them on the next item, but I recognize Chief Thompson and Assistant Chief Penn for being in the house. When you start calling names, you get in trouble, but I see you, Public Safety Attorney Sykes. Thank you all for the work that you do for the community. Are there any questions on Ms. Tony, for Ms. Tony regarding this particular item? Councilwoman Scipio.
There was one thing on that list that I just need a little clarification about, new uniforms. What does that mean? Do they not get new uniforms, or what happens with the uniforms that you think that's a strategy for retention?
All right, we'll have our police chief come up
Must be a sensitive point.
and give us an answer to the question.
Good evening, Chair Taylor,
Good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and members of the committee. As it pertains to the new uniforms, there are a couple different things that employees are really interested in right now. One is that the current material of our current uniforms are somewhat heavy. The difference right now, the only real difference between our kind of winter uniform and our summer uniforms are the short sleeve shirts. The material for the pants and the shirts are basically the same. And so one of the things that staff would like to consider is some lighter uniforms. To answer your question, yes, they do get every 2 years, you can get new uniforms as needed, or if something happens during a chase or something like that where you damage a uniform, of course that can be replaced. But what officers are talking about is basically some lighter uniforms, but also possibly, and I'll tell you that depending on who I'm talking to, I may get a different answer, but some officers are looking at more softer uniforms, more relaxed uniforms for patrol.
Does that answer your question, Councilwoman Scipio?
Yes, so it's a creative new look that
Yes,
they're
ma'am.
looking for.
Yes, ma'am.
And mixing it up for different occasions, perhaps.
That is correct.
I like it.
Any other questions for Chief Thompson or Assistant City Manager Tony regarding G3? Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Again, just like with Dr. Barnett, I hope that you all will move forward to bring the council something that we can sink our teeth in. Now, we might not be able to do everything at one time, so you guys need to prioritize. As they say, it's Burger King. If you like pickles, you need to make sure you're at the front of the line for the pickles. But I think this is a great, this is great for our city, great for you all, the staff, that we want everybody to be part of this team. And we want the best of the best. And we want people to love working for the city and taking care of us, the citizens. So again, I just commend you. Thank you. The teamwork, collaboration, love it. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'll just tell you, as Assistant City Manager Tony mentioned, we have about 112 employees that committed to be a part of a retention committee, where they are actually coming together and divided into subgroups with different pillars that each group has been tasked with looking at. And again, the fact that they're willing to be a part of having input into some decisions, but more importantly, that we're listening to them, I know is appreciated very much. And so for us to be able to move forward with some of the recommendations, as you notice, some of our employees now are wearing beards, which is not something that I grew up with in this agency. But if that's a bone that we can throw to our employees, it hurts nothing. And in most cases, they were paying money monthly for that, and that money would go to a local charity. And so, when we talk about things like that, that really, it's different than what we did 25 years ago, but it changes nothing in terms of service delivery other than making the employee more comfortable.
New world of work.
Yes, ma'am. And so I really appreciate your openness and willingness to listen.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate your comments. Members of the committee, council, we have one last informational item. Madam Clerk, I'll turn it over to you to read the item, please.
Item G4, information on Winston-Salem Police Department's pilot program deployment of automated license plate readers.
Thank you, ma'am. Giving us information on this item is Assistant Chief Penn. Thank you for being here, sir. You have the floor.
Good evening, Chair Taylor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee. My name is William Penn. I'm one of the assistant police chiefs for this city. I currently oversee the Support Service Bureau as well as Investigative Service Bureau, which includes our Real-Time Crime Center. Today, I'm going to present to you information on a pilot program the police department has been asked to participate in. Next slide, please. As always with this pilot program, the mission is to eliminate crime through crime prevention as well as apprehension of criminals. So the program, Flock and Axon together are willing to pay $71,000 for a first-year subscription for the police department to participate in this pilot program that's going to provide 25 license plate readers throughout the city. Now, it'll be deployed through the city through the use of statistical data in our shot spotter coverage area and thoroughfares going in and out of the city. These cameras will be integrated with our Real-Time Crime Center through the use of Fuses and Flock Safety app, and I know you've heard a lot about Fuses over the past couple months. So what does this license plate reader do? It's going to capture license plate numbers, present it to give officers the ability to compare that with these suspicious vehicles and vehicles that have been suspected in crimes throughout the city. The LPRs, license plate readers, will be mounted on poles provided by Flock, and they'll capture all license plates that go through that area and also capture location, date, and time. General Statute 20-183.3, I'm not going to read all that to you, I promise. Basically, these first two letters here, you'll see, they address what a LPR is, which is a camera or a set of cameras that capture images and then convert that to readable data. And then The second number you see there, I'm not going to talk to you about what law enforcement agency is. I think we know that. However, on this page here, this actually explains the regulation of use of the license plate readers, which states before any law enforcement agency uses a license plate reader, they must adopt a written policy governing that use. Now, I'll tell you later on in that statute, it also details what information must be in that policy. And one last thing to know is that much of that policy is based on recommendations by the ACLU. Privacy. Everyone wants to know about the privacy portion. It's important to know that the footage will be owned by the Winston-Salem Police Department as well as the city and won't be sold or shared by Flock. Also, there'll be a 30-day retention period, which is going to be a shorter period than what the state required in the statute. That short retention period ensures that the data not associated with the crime or missing person will be automatically purged and won't be recoverable. And then last bullet point, it takes the human bias out of crime solving by detecting objective data. When these LPRs are set up, a stolen car that goes by it is a stolen car that goes by it. What is captured on a license plate reader? License plate and state, the make of that vehicle, the color of that vehicle, and how many times that vehicle has passed through that reader. If you look at the photo there, that's an example of what will be captured, and as you can tell, we removed that license plate number for the sake of privacy. Now, how would the police department benefit from the LPR? The important word here is provide real-time, and that's real-time alerts whenever a stolen vehicle, amber alert, silver alert, any vehicle that's been involved in violent activity, that information will immediately go to our real-time crime center as well as our communication center, and we can get officers on that case immediately. Traditionally and currently, whenever we're dealing with these types of crimes, the information is relayed to officers through radio, MCT, the laptops in the computers in the car, as well as email. Then we have to base that on an officer locating that vehicle, getting behind that vehicle, and checking that license plate number. The LPRs strategically placed in the location gives us 25 more eyes looking for some of these suspicious vehicles. We can also share that intelligence remotely with the surrounding agencies. Here we have a short video here that should be able to give us a little overview, and it's not, so we'll move on. It's important to know that the surrounding agencies that are utilizing LPRs, the Kernersville Police Department, Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, Mooresville Police Department, Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, Winston-Salem State University Police Department, as well as Wake Forest University Police Department. Also would like to add that we have 2 neighborhoods here in the city that are utilizing the Flock application in their communities, as well as Councilmember Mundy was talking about parking. We have 2 parking locations in the downtown area who are also using LPR technology for parking enforcement. Any questions?
Chief Penn, about 10 or so years ago, the years started to run together after a while. We worked, when I say we, the Public Safety Committee, the council, worked with the police department and the ACLU to take a look at how we address traffic stops in the city of Winston-Salem. We were able to revamp how we address traffic stops, and I noticed that you mentioned the ACLU just moments ago. How actively involved is the ACLU with the implementation of this technology?
So my understanding is that the state listened to and got recommendations from the ACLU as the state created a policy for law enforcement agencies to use when utilizing license plate readers.
Thank you. Councilman Mundy.
The other agencies listed here, they've been through the pilot program and they've adopted this? Is that correct?
So some of them aren't in the pilot program. Some of them are just in utilizing that license plate reader technology.
Okay. Is there any reason why we're kind of late to the game in doing this?
I don't have an answer for you, but I can tell you we were approached with this opportunity and we saw it as it's time for us to get in the game.
I agree. Thank you.
Councilwoman Scipio.
I think it's a wonderful thing that we have anything for free. I always say, don't leave any money on the table. We can learn from free, and we can learn from free better in many cases than if we had to pay for it. So I think I'm very much in favor of learning it, but it certainly seems like Big Brother's watching you. I know that would be a concern. But my big question is, the retention period of the data for only 30 days, does that mean that the footage cannot be used in court proceedings later on because it's
So I mentioned a 30-day retention. If not, if the data isn't involved with a missing person or crime. So just you going down the street and that data's captured, after 30 days, that data's gone.
Okay, so you can't track my goings and comings when I'm doing my clandestine operations.
No,
That's very good, that's very good. But for court, you can go ahead and use it for,
right. If it's
court proceedings.
yes, missing
Okay.
persons and crimes, yes.
right.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Again, I think it's game change time. Anything that we can get that we don't have right now that improves the quality of life of our citizens, our employees, the staff, everybody, it's time. I applaud you, Councilmember Chair Taylor. I remember in DC for an inauguration, I let a friend of mine use my card to go to some parties. A month later, I got a traffic ticket from DC from $200. I called a friend, oh, that wasn't me, shows, they put the picture on it. So, I know we're not using it for that, but the fact that we do have people running in and out of our communities lately, drive-by seems to be the crime of choice when it comes to gun violence. So I think this is great, I really do.
Councilman Larson.
Yes, we know that we're challenged right now to staff the police department fully, and this gives us, as you said, 25 sets of extra eyes out there, and I think that's huge advantage to our police department to get something out there that we can handle digitally or electronically when it normally would take policemen in cars to deal with it.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Mundy.
If Councilmember Scipio is the most clandestine person in Winston-Salem, I think we can let all you guys go. But that's not my point. I think I know the answer to this. I want to hear you say it. This information, for instance, if it's set up in front of a stop sign and somebody rolls through that stop sign or blows through that stop sign, this will not be used to issue traffic violations of that order. Is that correct?
Right. This isn't stoplight violation camera. That's not what this is
Good.
about.
I just wanted us to say that out loud so the public can know it's not as Big Brother as they might be concerned.
Right.
Councilwoman Scipio.
Just one follow-up. I would like to request one of these cameras on Barley Road where we have constant trash dumping. It is horrible, it's a crime, and we need to have something that we can say to somebody, you did it and here it is. Because we have dumping all over this city, and we need to get a handle on it, and I'm tired of them dumping on Barley Road specifically. Every time we pick up, the next moment, they know, they come back. I think this is a great tool that we can use for more than just police work, but it is police work. Since we can't have a person out there, I'd like to, please consider it, okay?
We'll definitely see what we can do.
And if you can put a hologram of me on it that comes out, I think that would be cool, so I could really scare some people real good.
Thank you. Ms. Tony.
Some members watching.
Yes, this technology is for license plate readers for public safety. But Councilmember Scipio, we are looking to purchase additional cameras for code enforcement to place in those areas where there's frequent illegal dumping. So that is coming, and we have proposed that in the budget. We're really for ARPA resources.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilman Burke.
Yes, thank you. Chief Penn, thank you so much for this presentation. I think that this is an excellent opportunity for the city to take advantage of this free license plate reader program, and I know that it will help us in the long run to prevent crime. I have a question. I read all of the information, and it said that each ward would receive one. Have you all determined where in each ward, kind of like what Councilmember Scipio had requested for Barley Road? Have you all determined where? And will the council members have the ability to have some input as to where these readers will be located within each ward?
Assistant Chief Penn.
So we haven't sat down and mapped out where they're going yet. However, we are going to be using data. That's going to be the driving force of where we put those LPRs. And yes, you'll have say. I mean, we'll definitely listen to what you all have to say.
Thank you.
And just for the record, there will be 25 units, as I understand, that will be equitably spread across the city. I know it's going to be very difficult to divide 8 into 25, but we'll do our best to get them out where they need to be. But Chief Penn, excellent presentation. Ms. Tony, thank you for bringing this forward. Chief Thompson, thank you as well. Any other questions on item G4?
Good work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Assistant Chief Penn. Members of the council committee, is there any other further business that we need to consider for the good of the order? Councilman Mundy.
I don't know if anybody's mentioned this, Lee, the death of Senator Linda Garou. She passed away. It was in today's newspaper, and I believe she'd had a stroke, and just recently. And she served, our state and our community very, very well. I knew her personally just a little bit, but enough to know that she was just a lovely lady and a great citizen, and a lot of community service that she offered. So I'd just like to offer condolences to her husband, John, and the rest of her family.
Very great, good point. Thank you. Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
For those of you who don't know, the press conference for the North Carolina Black Theater Festival was held today. So Black Theater is back, okay? August the 1st through August the 6th. More to come.
Yay.
Put on your purple and black.
Yes,
the
sir.
theater is back.
Sounds marvelous.
With that being said, if there's no further items or further business, we consider this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.